physicist studying SARS-CoV-2 virus believes he has found hints we are living in a simulation. So the first question tonight, of course, is what do you think of simulation theory, and do we live in it? Right? Number one, that's the basic question of this. It is the premise of everything, or else everything kind of falls on its face philosophically as part of the discussion. Okay. So do you believe in simulation theory in any capacity whatsoever? Or are you like me and your ego's like, oh, hell no, no. So that's the first question. The second question is, if this is the case, let's say this individual that found this information, he believes with the evolution of the SARS-CoV-2 virus that is it possible to find, let's say, hints of the simulation system from within the system itself? Again, you cannot measure a system from within, but can you detect the system you're in through glitches, anomalies, through things like this, maybe pattern recognition, the things that we've talked about in the past? And does that seem possible at all to you? Because to me, I don't know. I would think that the creators of this would be a little bit more probably careful in the sense of where this leads. Okay. Cause I, or maybe not, maybe it's built in as a, whatever, like revolution is what they want, is what somebody said in the chat there. I mean, maybe that's exactly the point, is to kind of just continually sort of rabble rouse the world until we get the world we want, if you know what I mean. And I mean rabble rouse in the nicest way. But I don't know. I don't know the answers here, but that's where we start. And so it got me thinking in terms of, so I was just kind of cruising through this and really just framing my mind in how come we have so many of these circular stories, the old mythological aspects of, pantheons of gods based on nature and, based on the Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, not just, let's say, the gods themselves, but we're talking, demigods, we're talking the heroes of old, Odysseus and whatnot, Achilles, even, half and half sort of a hybrid deities, this type of thing. I don't know, but still they are heroes, ancient heroes. That's, again, back to Joseph Campbell and the hero's call, and that circular system that we're sort of trapped in. It is something that we're all going through, I think, for certain, that whole hero's journey is definitely a thing. Okay. But why though? And why specifically is it something we can't break out of? Does the world always need heroes? Is it one of those things where sort of that call to become something greater than yourself is always prevalent, and it's always something that's kind of asking us to do quite a bit more than we ever assumed we could personally? Maybe. But is it something else entirely? Is it sort of the hero's journey in this mythological encryption, I'm calling it, baked into the matrix itself, including, let's say, these sort of secret symbols through these circular stories? No matter how you look at the let's say, cultures and civilizations throughout history, there's a lot of the same damn stories, just different faces, different names, different ideas, but the actual like core function of these things are very, very, very similar. And which led Joseph Campbell to write the God of many faces and write about that hero's journey, and why that monomyth seems to resurface no matter where you are on the planet. It is a resonant human frequency that everybody knows about pretty much no matter where you are in time, modern or ancient, you would assume. And so what does it look like? And why is it something that we continually have to face over and over and over again? And I don't know. And so the theory is here. So if we can say that, all right, just maybe we can sniff out features or clues or hints of us living in a simulation from something like a physicist studying SARS-CoV-2 and the evolution of the strain, and suggesting that it's been planned somehow by kind of cosmically. Okay. But of course, in a simulation, cosmically just means programmed. It just means pre-planned, pre-programmed, mapped out, ready to go, and knowing exactly where this thing's going to lead to in the evolutionary aspect. Okay. So what does it look like? I don't know. But what I do wonder is if there are sort of these embedded codes there for us. Because we all recognize the hero's journey, because we all recognize this folklore of old and these old mythological constructs, that we're all sort of baked into the same idea of stand up. Right? Stand up for yourself, stand up for others, stand up against systems when they're corrupt. Become that hero of, well, let's say, the hero of the ages, I guess, is a way to put that. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but it does make me wonder, and that's exactly the point as we start this tonight. So I was cruising through this again, just as usual, just kind of burning through ideas and trying to find some inspiration for these things, right? And there's this. So the folklore of the United States, this is from Wikipedia, kind of boring, right? It's one of those, like, you're like, yeah, this isn't very troubled mindsy. But when you look at this and you start going down here and kind of reading about this stuff, there's a ton of wild stuff. Not just, we're talking about, Columbus and the Native American folklore and Jamestown and George Washington. And then it gets into really weird stuff. We get into fictional stuff. We're talking, Paul Bunyan. We're talking about the Lone Ranger, talking about Cordwood Pete, if you've heard of him, Pico's Bill. And then other things like, which is very troubled minds, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. We get into Champ, which is, of course, Lake Champlain, the Nessie-like creature that lives up there, supposedly. Punxsutawney Phil, of course, is the groundhog, which is, again, folklore-y, fictitious, whatever. The Jersey Devil, the White Lady, which is a wild one. I think I'm going to come back and recircle this and do a show on this that kind of fits into that sort of hitchhiker aspect. But let me read this real quick. So the White Lady is a type of female ghost reportedly seen in rural areas and associated with some local legend of tragedy. Common to many of them is the theme of losing or being betrayed by a husband or fiancé. They are often associated with an individual family line or said to be a harbinger of death, similar to a banshee. Anybody do a banshee scream? Let's hear it out there. Mothman? The Hodag is a mythical beast that is said to inhabit the forests of northern Wisconsin. Old Black Eyes is a spectral hound said to frequent an area known as the Baker Rocks, located near the top of the Black Mountains of North Carolina. On and on, right? And Santa Claus and you name it. Like, we are rich in heroes, folklore, and this, again, the hero's journey and this cyclical version of everything, every damn thing, right? And that's the wild part about this, is you got to wonder how much of this is baked in as part of a simulation. Again, philosophical construct, if you believe in simulation theory, as, we're putting our toes in the ocean of the maybe juice and considering that maybe this is the place we are, then what the hell's happening with all this circular stuff? If you can program anything. So the bounds are endless in a programmable system where we live here as human constructs or code constructs or whatever you want to call us, human NPCs or whatever it is, right? Like I said, my ego hates it. My ego hates it. But you see what I mean? And this is just American folklore. Like, you can go all over the world and there's lists like this that go back historically forever, basically, forever. Even things we don't know about, but it seems like a lot of this stuff is circular for a very specific reason. And I wonder, and here's a question tonight. Let's layer it on top. Is it odd or is it strange that these circular stories seem to never end? And here we are in the modern time, always expecting, look, I'm always expecting we've turned a corner and hoping and praying and dreaming and believing that humanity one day will just stop butchering each other on battlefields, okay? And we keep thinking in the moment, this is the moment, right? This is the moment humanity has ascended to past the butcher aspect of just what we have been in the past, okay? Well, but then we're disappointed by, again, recent current events. I don't even have to say the words. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, come on, guys, like, can't we just stop this? But I do wonder, what the hell's happening with all of this stuff in these circular moments? These circular, again, we live in this. But here's the trick, and here's the question, and here's the thing that got me creeped out a little bit when I was thinking about this. Is it possible that these mythological constants, and that's what these things are, folklore, mythology, they're constants, pretty much around the world, different names, different faces, as I described, but the constant is the story. The constant is the circular motion of the mythologies themselves, of the folklore themselves, of the characters within, of the greater than human aspects of heroes, and of course, the wild and weird deities that are none other than many times, most times even, trickster spirits in some way or another, kind of throwing chaos into an otherwise, let's say, stable system. And I say stable system, meaning, you could almost set your watch by when the next war is going to start, stable system over the past, several thousand years. So it seems like there is a stable system. Okay. It's unfortunate that it's butchering people. And here we are living in that still in 2024. Except Except I wonder if there's a hidden code somewhere in that mythological encryption suggesting that we should notice something that we're not noticing. You see what I'm saying? I know it's a stretch, but again, so a lot of sort of basic witch conspiracy 101 stuff if you're into it. Do you believe in the simulation theory? Do you think it's possible? And how does your ego like it? As I've always said, mine hates it. But that doesn't mean that the universe itself gives a damn what my ego thinks, okay? Because my ego is a construct of the universe itself. So maybe that's exactly part of the trick. Part of the trick is our ego's supposed to hate the idea of being a computer construct, and we're just ones and zeros of code like Neo in the Matrix, except, we haven't become Neo yet, which of course brings us back to that circular idea, the hero's journey. Anyway, what do you know about this? And is it, I don't know, isn't it strange that kind of going through folklore and all the rest of the stuff, you get, cryptids, what's up, Richard? There's ghost stories, there's all the things, all the paranormal aspects. There's now modern times, we're talking aliens. All of this stuff seems to suggest that these are stories, once again, recycled over and over and over again. And is it possible, the question tonight, is it possible that this hidden code within the code is actually going to be what leads us out? You see what I'm saying? Sort of a secret society, hidden in plain sight, because it's the same story told over and over and over again. And our dumbasses just don't get it. Yeah, I don't know. That's where I sit tonight. That's where we begin, and that puts us about exactly where we need to be. So I don't know. That's the idea tonight, and I do wonder how deep this goes, because there's a whole bunch of different stuff here too. Let's see. What's the other thing too? Oh, the other thing to add to this is that you guys remember the idea of pareidolia. Now, this comes up a lot in the paranormal world, and when they talk about these things, and humans as being those pattern recognition experts, okay? And we see faces everywhere. We see faces in the clouds. We see faces in the foliage. We see faces on a doorknob, that somebody left a greasy sweat stain on or whatever. We see a face in there. Like, we see faces everywhere. And so I do wonder if that's part of that code. It's been written into us to have that pareidolia effect where we're pattern recognition experts, but for some reason we can't put it all together because maybe our ego is the massive block. You see what I'm saying? I don't know, just throwing some ideas out, but trying to think about the world in different ways here. And of course, what that looks like in a simulation theory. So, yep. I don't know. But there's, pareidolia, we'll get back to that because I think it fits into this very well. But you tell me. Love to hear your thoughts on this. As usual, no answers from me, just ideas. Yes, indeed. Puts us right about, as I said, where we need to be. If you want to be part of the show tonight, we got James Salcido coming up, and we got the Robert as well in Pennsylvania. What do you know about this? Is it possible there's something called, I'm calling this the mythological encryption, meaning if we crack the code of this same circular story that's been burned into our brains over and over and over again throughout the centuries, is it possible to somehow, some way, become like an admin avatar within the Matrix, an ascended master of old, right? That type of idea. I don't know. And is this maybe me dreaming a little bit too hard about technological constructs? Look, tonight we're taking your calls as we talk about this mythological encryption. How come even in a simulation, we still have these same stories repeat over and over and over again? Does it almost seem like there's a code embedded within the code trying to tell us something, trying to tell our human knuckleheaded egos that, hey, there's a story out there and it's about you, and you should be considering that maybe, just maybe, it's the most important story. I don't know. As I said, as I always say, truth is a slippery fish, and I'm not ever claiming that there's any truth to any of this stuff. But what I am saying is that there is some peculiarities, can I say it, to simulation theory, and not just that, being able to sort of recognize within the system, or not measure it, but recognize you're within it. I think there's a lot here to consider because, as I said, my ego doesn't like it, but the universe doesn't give a damn what my ego thinks because I am a construct of that universe. So, right, like why would I don't know, walking by an ant, if you're the universe, why would you care? You're like, sorry, bro, get over it. Anyway, do you think this is too far afield, or what do you think about simulation theory? Lots of angles to kind of tackle this. And again, back to the folklore bit too. I think this is really important, or an important part of it, that no matter where we're at, there's always sort of these superstitious narratives in some ways that are prevalent, again, all the way through history, no matter where you're at. And I wonder if it's baked in as part of this mythological encryption, these, centaurs of old, or Mothmen of New. What the hell's going on? And am I onto something, or do you think I'm way far off? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show just like this. Let's go to James in Michigan. What's up, my man? Saucedo Paranormal. How are you?
I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. You sound great, sir. Go right ahead.
Good. Um, yeah, this is an amazing topic because I think it can explain a lot of. It can be one possible explanation for a lot of, especially these recurring stories, like you said. I would love to, if you when you do a show on the whole woman in white thing, I'd be happy to join you for that as well. Because that pops up so much around the world. It's not even just like U.S. or even UK, or it's like everywhere, just about. And so many of these stories, they have stories, they have explanations attached to them. But then, of course, they fall more into folklore because there is no historical record in a lot of these cases of the events in the story happening. And yet, there are still sightings of these figures in these locations.
Yeah, still thousands of years later, whatever. And they're still telling. And look, you could even probably strip away all modern folklore and sort of all modern pantheons. Let's say modern within a couple. Let's say 500 years or so. But we'd still be talking about like the Greek gods of old, like we are. They're in Marvel comics, for crying out loud. I mean, it seems like these things never die. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try and sort of ignore them, it seems like it is the prevalent narrative that we're missing. But what are we missing becomes the problem, right? I think it's complicated, which is why we should kind of consider this as a possibility. Why the hell not?
Yeah, and I wonder too, with the whole idea of like a matrix situation, is it who exactly does the programming? Is it only one entity that's outside of it? Or is it everyone? Does the whole co-creation idea play a part in this? Is that part of why? Again, I've talked about that before. How some places, again, just like I mentioned, there's a story, there's sightings, but there's no documentation of the original events happening. But there's stories that have been going on, passed down for again decades, hundreds of years. Even especially mythology, like you just said. I mean, there's still all these figures are around in various forms all around the world, and so many of them do have. Just look at like Greek, Greek to Roman to Egyptian, back and forth. So many of those figures, there's similarities and or just different names for what seem to be the same or very similar entities, and that's just one example of that.
Yeah, and again, it is the same story told over and over and over again, and I got to wonder why. It's almost as if, like we, I want to say that we are incapable of telling greater stories because I mean, look, just us, you and me, we've come up with some wild stuff that has nothing to do with any of that. Like maybe it's sort of based in some of the hero's journey or some of these other things, but I mean, just some of the narratives we've talked about on this show are way beyond that, like way cosmic and way bizarre and all kinds of just wild stuff. So to me, saying and considering that humans are only capable of like a certain spectrum of stories seems ridiculous because our imaginations can go as far as we want them to go. So I don't know. It becomes a paradox in some way, sort of the storytelling aspect. But how can we keep telling the same damn story? It's almost as if not only is it baked in, it's almost as if there might be maybe the most critical message there that we're again our ego is kind of eschewing because of the new ways. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, and I do agree that it's. I don't think there really is a limit. I think there's just patterns that a lot of people fall into. But that made me just think of science fiction, the way people over the years have written things, and it's been made up at the time, and then years later, that kind of technology is developed and is real, whatever real is. And so, yeah, definitely seems like there's two sort of um, ends of that spectrum there as well. So, but yeah, I'm thinking if you don't mind, I'll just hang out here because I know you got other callers. So, and then you can come back to me if there's time, and I'll just be listening.
Sure, for sure, 100%. Amazing stuff as always. James Salcedo, you know him, you love him, a dear friend, as you know, and the glue of troubled minds, as you know, and the paranormal expert, the man of many titles, and of course, he's got his own show, his own radio show, his own podcast. It's called Salcedo Paranormal. Check it out, SALSIDO space paranormal, or just search it yourself, or click troubledminds.org/friends. Links in the description down there. It says follow James. Click that link, and it has an entire link tree of all his stuff. He's written books. He's got the podcast. He's got the YouTube channel. He's got a Twitter account, Twitter X account. Follow him in all the places, please. He deserves it. He's working hard and doing great work. And again, as part of it, going through the important part about what James is doing, in my opinion, the most important part is that he's cataloging these paranormal stories as we're talking about now, and sort of these circular ideas. They seem to be, again, not just modern, they seem to be ancient. And how does that all come together? And he's literally kind of combing through the internet and putting some of these ghost stories together, not some of them, hundreds of them, thousands of them in one place. So if you're interested in that, well, and you should be if you're here listening to Troubled Minds, do go check it out. James is doing fantastic work over there. So please, please, please go listen to his podcast on the way to work or something. It's a nice 20-minute episode length just about, and it's perfect for a commute. So please do that. James, you're the best. Hang tight. We'll get back to you momentarily. Thanks for always being flexible and the glue and a good friend, and just amazing as always. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
You bet. Stay right there. We'll get back to you. 702-957-1037. Talking about, again, so could a new law of physics support the idea we're living in a computer simulation? And this actually goes back to October of last year, and it's kind of resurfacing right now. But it is this same thing. This physicist studying SARS-CoV-2 virus believes he has found hints we are living in a simulation. And so the question becomes, is it possible to notice hints from within? Okay, from within the system. And maybe are they built into the system itself to catch our attention in some ways, which might be something like this, maybe scientifically, maybe something like CERN. We've talked about sort of the smallest particles as possible pixels in a simulated universe. What does that look like? I don't know. But how much of it do you believe? You think it's nonsense or whatever? And it's okay. As usual, look, if you're like, nah, this is too far afield, I think it's all nonsense. That's cool. I mean, that's where we start. So it's all fine. You don't have to drink the maybe juice Kool-Aid. Just consider what you know about the world we live in. And